Welcome to Sarajevo was released in 1997. This is directed by Michael Winterbottom. It's written by Frank Cottrell Boyce, and it's based on Natasha's story by Michael Nicholson. And we have a cast including Stephen Dillane and Woody Harrelson. And in general, as a piece of entertainment, I didn't care for it. But as a snapshot of history, I found it to be quite fascinating. So I don't really know how I feel about it. I enjoyed bits of it. I didn't enjoy it in terms of sitting down and losing myself in the narrative. For me personally, I didn't find it that interesting. But because it's based on this true story, and I'll talk about this in a moment, I did enjoy the educational aspect, and I did do a little bit of reading around it. This is set during the Bosnian War, which I know absolutely nothing about, so I did get a little bit of education there. And it's primarily about two journalists, and one of the journalists decides to take back to England a little girl. And there are a lot of problems with this, but given the really serious war issues at the time, it was deemed potentially a better option, and that's what the bulk of the narrative is about. So I found it to be moderately interesting. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't find it to be that engaging. The story was fine, the pacing's not too bad, but just in terms of personal preference, I didn't love every aspect of it. But as I said, as a piece of history, and yes, I took everything with a pinch of salt, but it did give me the opportunity to do a little bit of reading around it, and that part of it I found to be quite interesting. That being said, I obviously can't vouch for the historical accuracy. So if you have any thoughts on that, if you know basically any more than I do about the Bosnian War, because I know nothing, or, well, I guess I knew nothing, I now know a little bit more. But if you know anything about it and you have any thoughts on the accuracy here, please feel free to share. As I said, it's also based on the book Natasha's Story, which I obviously haven't read. I don't know how closely related the story is. So again, if you have any thoughts on that, please feel free to let me know. In general, it's an interesting film, but for me, in terms of personal preference, it wasn't the most entertaining, but it absolutely was educational. There were definitely a lot of emotions in this. The performances were very good, and in general, I don't have any complaints. The only issues are purely personal preference based. Visually, it's quite impressive. The camera work's very good. It definitely gets quite, I don't want to say scary, but it is a war film, so it gets quite intense and unpredictable, and that gives a level of anxiety at times. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to feel. The characters are brilliant. The narrative works well. The bits that I enjoyed, I did like. And the rest of it, I didn't dislike, just wasn't fully engaging for me. So I don't have any complaints. I'd love to know what you think of it, either if you're coming from my perspective or if you know anything about the Bosnian War. I feel a little bit more educated, which is always a good thing. In terms of being entertained, I was moderately entertained. The performances are very good. The characters are well written. I don't know how true they are to the true story. Obviously, the fact, well, I didn't mention this. I say obviously. The book is called Natasha's Story, but the name has been changed to Emira in the film. I don't know why. Maybe just to make it more of a work of fiction. Maybe there is more in this that has been written as fiction based on the true story. So I'm not 100% sure why, but certainly it was interesting enough. Would I watch it again? No, I wouldn't. But I don't mind having watched it. It was a decent one-time experience, and I learned a bit more about the Bosnian War. I still have a long way to go to be even remotely knowledgeable about the Bosnian War, but I learned something, and I appreciate that. So, in general, Welcome to Sarajevo is an okay film. I think some people will like it more than I did, but in general, I didn't dislike it, and if it sounds like a film that might appeal to you, then I'd say it's definitely worth checking out.